Hi, I'm Pam, and I would like to welcome you to the Live Authentically show. My team and I help other people step into their authentic realities via a number of different modalities. This show is obviously one of them. I also have a Facebook group, and we can be found at liveauthentically.today/FB. I'm super pumped because I just launched my first book this year. It's called SOAR, SOAR, and it's experiential spiritual journey through a very transformative life event and shows how I partnered with the universe to create my new reality. I also do individual coaching and work with groups as well. So on today's show, I am super pumped to have with me Marta Spirk. Hey, Marta, how are you?
Hi, I'm great.
Good. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So just a little bit about Marta, and then we'll dive into our conversation. Marta is a writer, podcaster, and empowerment coach. With her 5-step process for self-growth, she empowers women entrepreneurs to stop spinning their wheels, trying random personal development resources so they can boost confidence and grow their business by looking at their most valuable resource, themselves. Through her podcast, The Empowered Woman, her virtual self-improvement membership and workshops, she hopes to encourage women to become their own support system and realize they already have it all. I love that, and I cannot wait to hear more about it on our show today.
Yay.
Um, so the way I start off every show is with the same question. I ask all of my guests the same question, and I would love to hear what it means to you to live authentically every day.
Oh, I love that question. Such a great question.
Thank
um,
you.
so for me, living authentically has everything to do with the work that I do and with self-love,
Mhm.
because I truly believe you can't truly love somebody you don't know. And in order to know yourself, you have to take the time, and that really helps with living authentically, because then once you know yourself, you can be that. We see so much out there, the hashtags, the printed tees, all the things saying just be yourself. Everybody else is already taken, which is really nice and a great message. But how do you go about doing that if you don't know who you are? And it takes time to figure that out.
I love that answer. And how did you come upon that? This whole concept of self-love. Because I know for me, I consider myself sort of a late bloomer in that department. I didn't quite understand the importance of self-love early enough. But can you tell me a little bit about your journey and how you came to that place?
Of course. So for me, it really started after I became a mom. So 4 years ago, I had triplets, and that was quite the whirlwind. And not only because it was something unexpected, I don't think anyone ever expects that they're going to get pregnant with triplets, but also because the reality of multiples is so different in so many ways, obviously, which many people would imagine. But it's really a struggle to see your kids individually, especially in the early stages.
Mhm.
Now that they're growing, they're almost 5. You can see the different personalities and everything. But
Yeah.
because we're always doing everything together and they're the same age, you tend to group them. Let's all do everything together because there's only one of me and 3 of them, or even when my husband's around, we're still outnumbered.
Yeah.
And very early on, I saw this struggle of seeing their individuality and making sure that they were treated as unique individuals, because they are. They just happen to be born the same day together, and to be conceived at the same time. And with that came this realization that in order for me to foster their individuality, I had to be doing that for myself too. And also because of this dilemma of I can never give them individualized attention. Once they're older, and I know it will be different, but especially in the moment that I'm living now and that we're living now in the world of being stuck together for such long periods of time, um, it's hard for me to take that time and be with the one child when they're so young and they don't really understand. And instead of beating myself up because it is an impossibility, a physical impossibility, I realize that the more I nurture myself, I'm going to be that role model for them to understand their individuality. And it'll be easier for me to nurture their individuality once I know exactly who I am as a person. And the thought of, once they grow, once they leave the home, once I don't have control over their lives, which even living with them, I still don't, But you can break any parent's heart, right? To know that one, I think I saw a meme the other day that says being a mom is accepting that you're going to worry for the rest of your life, because it really is. There will be a time where I won't be there, that I won't be able to hold their hand. And if there's anything that I can teach them that they can take away from our time together as they're growing, is to learn to love themselves. So that's where it all started.
I love that. And I think that is such a beautiful gift that you're teaching your children from such an early age. They obviously, the values are caught by them, right? They observe what we do.
Yeah.
And I remember when my kids were little, I'd have them in tow and I'd be hauling them to the gym and, oh, we don't want to go to childcare. And they didn't in the moment, but I know what I was modeling for them
Yeah.
is something that's going to stick with them for years to come.
Exactly.
They're going to grow up seeing that working out is just part of a healthy lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Taking time to make a healthy salad for lunch is just part of a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I know everybody's self-love, self-care routine looks different, but can you give me an idea, a little glimpse into what yours looks like? Maybe give our listeners and viewers some menu items. Like I said, I know it's individual, but
Mm-hmm.
we'd love to hear about what yours looks like, and then also some other ideas that people can consider.
Of course. And before I get into mine, I love that you said it's very individual, because it is true. As humans, we tend to look for that formula and think that it's going to work for everybody. And then when it doesn't, we get frustrated. And a lot of what I teach my clients and a lot of my message is figuring out what works for you. You can, check out some tools, but at the end of the day, you have to test with your routine, and it may change with time because we go through seasons in life. For some people, for a while, a morning routine of like hours would work, but in the current state that we're living in with kids at home, not knowing if they're going to go back to school, that may not be a reality. And we have to be able to adjust and give ourselves grace if that's not our reality any longer. So for me, self-care and self-love and taking that time for myself means definitely working out. So I love that you said that, because I think that is something huge to pass on to our kids, is the importance of staying active and staying healthy. So that is one of the things that I do. Another one of the practices that I love and that I love teaching is something a little bit different than what we're used to seeing out there, because most people are used to the idea of a gratitude journal.
Mm-hmm.
Write things you're grateful for in the morning, things you're grateful for in the evening. And I like to incorporate something that I learned from a mentor years ago that's called a brag book, because you'll notice that in the gratitude journal, you're hardly ever in it. You're grateful for things, you're grateful for people, for experiences. But how about reminding yourself of your greatness and your accomplishments? Usually we wait for people to remind us. And when that doesn't come, then we just feel discouraged because we depend so much on that external validation. How about take people's compliments and acknowledgments as a bonus, because you're already learning to recognize yourself daily. So with the brag book, super simple, just like a gratitude journal, I like writing things that I'm proud of having accomplished. So kind of like listing your wins, but really focusing on this pride for yourself. It's so amazing how that can change your state of mind and your emotions instantly, because you start feeling what you felt at that moment when you accomplished that. And it doesn't have to be anything big or all the things big. In fact, I encourage people to list small things too, because technically your brain doesn't know the difference. It just knows the feeling, that feeling of relief or accomplishment or whatever it is. So whether it be getting your degree, landing that client, or folding the laundry, putting dinner on the table, all these things that usually we wait people to thank us for, to feel good about, just do it yourself. It doesn't matter if nobody said anything, even if they liked it. We can't rely on that or depend on that to feel encouraged. It has to start with us.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, like you said, having it start with us and not waiting for that external validation.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so important to have that one go-to place where we've got some things documented. Life gets challenging at times.
Yes.
It's nice to have that go-to kind of, vault of all of our values and skills and talents and everything that we need to be reminded of. Every once in a while, my business manager will send me just like a rocket fuel email or text, or just, you're doing a great job. Keep going. I'm proud of you. I recognize that you've shifted here recently. And I literally started keeping them all in one document, because we all need that from time to time. I mean, I know for me, entrepreneurship, it's hard. I mean, I love it. It's a lot of work, but it's hard, and so it's great to have those cheerleaders kind of in our corner and keep reminding us that we're doing a good job. And it's, precisely the fuel that we need to keep going. So I love that you shared that.
Exactly.
And I also love how you said we need to we need to adjust our schedules and be flexible and be nimble, particularly in
Mm-hmm.
the landscape where everything is changing so quickly. That is so important. I just wanted to echo that because so many times we live life, or we try to live life, or think we need to live life with a formulaic approach, right? How do you do things? And we try to follow certain models. But it's good to have sort of somewhat of a framework or structure, but allow room for individuality, because life is just, it's constantly changing, particularly in these days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear more about your background. I'd love to hear about professionally your background and how you got to where you are. Let's go there next.
Yes, definitely. So my background is actually a little bit different from what I'm doing. I see connections definitely, but I started out working with languages. So I'm originally from Brazil, and early on, I had this passion for the English language, the American culture, and I started teaching English and tutoring when I was 14. So kind of, my entrepreneurial journey started back then, where I would have, clients and students come to my house, or I would go to their house, help prepare for like standardized tests or whatever it is that they were working on. And my mom is a pastor, and she started getting a lot of connections with American churches that would have ministers come down to teach. And soon enough, I was asked to interpret, just like informally. And so I ended up pursuing that and getting a degree in translation. So that's my bachelor's degree. And then I went on to get a master's in linguistics. So everything was languages. I still work as an interpreter for the courts here in Colorado. And it's really something that I love, is being able to bridge that gap of languages. And now, of course, marrying my American husband, living here in the US, and still helping the Portuguese speaking community. But after having the kids is when everything kind of shifted for me. And with the coaching, with helping women appreciate themselves, love themselves, because that's where I found myself in that space of, I need to take a good look at myself and nurture myself, because there's 3 kids. So the flip side of I need to foster their individuality was, I need to take care of myself, because it's a lot of people to take care of. And there's not going to be a whole lot left if I don't nurture myself. So that was another point of conflict or stress that I found, and that I needed to tend to, and that I think all moms need to, because you're spreading your attention so thin with all the duties and all the hats that you wear. And but I see a lot of parallels with my background as a teacher as well. With being a coach, you are encouraging and you are teaching content, but you're also encouraging people to see that they can make it happen, that they can do it. And also with my background in church, I've been used to being in front of large audiences for almost 20 years now, with being in the worship team and being an interpreter. So it was only natural for me to kind of put myself out there and be kind of in the front lines, helping people, but right now with my own message, instead of representing somebody else and just being that voice, I'm actually the voice and the face of the message. And I love that.
Yeah, I love that as well. Take a quick sip of my tea, and I'm going to put this down because I'm super fired up about what you just said. And I'm putting my tea down because I'm Italian and I speak with my hands a lot. But what I want to echo and what I really want to highlight is the fact that you have a background that is it obviously prepared you for what you're doing, but it's not, it's slightly different. Maybe at that time you didn't necessarily foresee the turn or the pivot that you were going to be taking in your career.
Yeah.
And I just want to highlight that I think so many people get stuck in this thought pattern of, well, I'm not, professionally trained to do anything other than, whatever. Or I used to be an accountant, so therefore I always need to be an accountant. Yeah. My daughter, my oldest, is 16, and she's stressing now about career choices. I don't know what I want to do. And I said, honey, it's okay. You don't have to know what you, just figure out what you want to do right now.
Yes.
Do what makes sense for you right now, and know that that can change. When I was in my 20s, I was an actuary. I went to school for actuarial science, studied math and statistics. I went, and then I was a mom in my 30s, a stay-at-home mom. Now I'm doing something completely different. But much like you, I was able to take a lot of the skills that I learned through, being an actuary and apply them to what I'm doing today. So I just
Hmm.
think that's so important for everyone to understand that, you're not married to your first career,
Right.
you're not married to your first field of study. But every season serves a purpose that can serve as a foundational piece, kind of a launching pad for the rest of your career. I'm
Hmm.
working with people now in some career, counseling, career consulting, and they get stuck in that same mentality of, well, I've only done, I've only worked in, building companies or whatever. And I'm like, what can you do?
Yeah.
Right? Like, the brag book, focus on the skills, what you have, your values, what you can do.
Yes.
So I love, love, love that you shared that. That's huge.
Yes, no skill is ever wasted. And I think a lot of it too is times have changed. Before, older generations, they were used to the idea of staying in the same exact job for 30 years. That's not something as common right now. Things are changing, and it looks a little bit more dynamic with careers and the opportunities that you have, especially with being able to work from home, having side hustles, everything that the landscape of the market and things have changed, and we need to adapt to that as well and understand that yeah, no skill is ever wasted. You just have to learn to use it to your advantage.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. What is the most challenging aspect of what you do? I mean, I know you've got a full plate professionally, personally. What do you find is the most challenging aspect?
I think learning to let go of certain things of what's not working, and which I don't know if necessarily has to do with having a full plate or just the struggle of entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
um, and also because of my personality type. So that's one of the things that I use a lot to help women with, is understanding the lens that you see the world through, because it's, again, very individual, and that's how you can work with yourself instead of against yourself in your business. Because sometimes, most times, we start a business to add to our lives, not to take away, and it ends up going the reverse, right? We start being enslaved to the business, and it starts being another stress factor in our life on top of family and everything else. And that's when I think you need to take a step back and decide that you want the business to work for you and not the other way around. And so for me, the constant struggle really is understanding when is a season to try something new, when is a season to keep doing what I'm doing and just stick with it. With my personality type, and I'm very big on the Enneagram. I'm not sure if you're familiar or if you know your type, but I'm a type 3, and that is the achiever. So I like doing all of the things. And it's
Mhm.
hard for me to slow down. It's hard for me to turn my brain off because I am so goal oriented. And there are times that I just need to be and rest in what I have already accomplished. And that's where, the importance of the brag book comes in so handy for me, but I think for everyone in general, especially for threes, because we're always trying to do the next thing. And we tend to put our worth in our accomplishments instead of just knowing that I am worthy and I am valuable, regardless of any of the things that I do. And so I think that is definitely the struggle, because, whenever you're taking the time to spend time with family, you have your brain thinking about the things that you need to do for the business. And then when you're doing the business, you're thinking about, oh, I need to spend time with my family. And so finding that quote unquote balance, which I don't think really exists, it's just really that harmony and between professional life and personal life is really the goal of life, is mastering that. And I think there's an ebb and flow. It's never going to be 100%. We're constantly working on it, but
Mhm.
it's definitely one of the biggest struggles.
Thanks for sharing that. And I would like to echo that too. Just this whole idea of just being okay with just being, right? We're
Mhm.
so accustomed to equate our worth or our value with the doing. And, it's okay to just be. We should be that. We should just take time to just be, just to sit in a certain feeling of love or peace or whatever. We can just sit. And I think, we live in a society that is very fast paced and
Yeah.
is so focused on slang and that, that model is great. But it has an expiration date. I know. I mean, I've been there and I know burnt out is not a good look. And I'd like to talk about that next because I think that is such an important part of any process. The idea of rest and relaxation and recharging and rejuvenating is in any process. So if you can talk about that for a couple minutes, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yes, definitely. And like I said in the beginning, taking care of myself because of all the duties that I have, especially with having triplets, has been my goal and really my priority. And also understanding how hard that is. And I think for women in general, because we are naturally nurturing and selfless, right? We put everybody else's needs first. And we tend to think that that is really noble because you're thinking about the people that you love. But we forget that in a way, this selfless attitude can also be a little bit selfish, because if you're not all there, then you're not really giving much for people to work with. And I love the analogy of put your oxygen mask on first before you can help anybody. And before having kids, I never really understood why I would do that if I had a child sitting next to me. And now having kids, I understand how important that is, because you really need to be well to take care of others.
Right.
And most people are not well. And then they wonder why they keep struggling because they fail to look at themselves. And I have to say that it's been hard even for my family to understand this need, because it's not something that has been prioritized in generations. You know, the women has had this role of back burner. That's your life. Your life is sacrificing for everybody. And times have changed. And I think in very good ways, because we're people too. There's a person in there, and we need to be taken care of. And at most times we wait for people to do that, for people to give us the pass, you know, for our husbands to say, hey, I got this. But I have learned, because of my reality of triplets, especially, that I need to establish these boundaries, that if somebody's not going to give them to me, then I need to do it myself. And oftentimes people don't give it to you because you're not imposing them, because they're just really responding to what you're putting out there in the world. If you're putting out there in the world that you don't matter, guess what? That's what people will see. But if you put out there in the world that, hey, I have a voice, I have needs, and I will make sure that they get met, people will take a step back, and they will respect that because you're respecting yourself. And going back to the idea of self-love, it's something that gets thrown out a lot. And just like with the be yourself that I said in the beginning, it's one of those things that kind of lose its weight and lose its value and its meaning. Self-love. Okay, of course I love myself. I've never had thoughts of harming myself. I want the best for me. But we fail to acknowledge that we constantly disrespect ourselves daily. So if you don't want to say you hate yourself, which that may be too strong, think about the ways you disrespect yourself. And we do that all the time when we don't set boundaries, when we burn out, right? When we overcommit, when we don't say no to things, and then we can't follow through. Not to mention disrespecting others if you're putting too much on your plate, right? But it starts really with yourself, with going to bed after doing a million things and still feeling like you should have done more. All those things are forms of disrespect. And we do that constantly. And once you take the time to understand, wow, I am not my priority, I am not taking care of myself, it becomes easier to see how you're not really taking care of anybody. Because if that's how you're treating yourself, you're not doing that great of a job with others. And that's not to beat anybody up, because I'm not about that at all. It's quite the opposite. But in order to make changes, you have to become aware of what you're doing. And so understanding the ways you disrespect yourself is huge to start making those shifts and understand that when it comes to self-love, everybody has room for improvement.
That's so true. And I just think that's so important that we all understand, you know, the world responds to how we feel about ourselves. It all starts from within. And other people will respond to the way we treat ourselves.
Yes.
So if we're honoring ourselves and articulating boundaries and having standards, but I think sometimes we don't realize, right, that we aren't honoring ourselves. It's just so important to bring that awareness. What are some ways that people can start to become, you know, in tune with whether or not, I know when we start to just dabble in this area for people who haven't necessarily been exposed to it before, I know when I started to dabble in spirituality, these concepts, they were a little nebulous. You know, they aren't as tangible as some of the, you know, the numbers that I used to deal with back in my 20s. So What does that look like for people? Like, how can they start to take inventory on, do I really love myself or not?
I love that you said nebulous because when it comes to personal development and personal growth, it is really nebulous. It's not like looking at the numbers in your business. Am I doing better this month than I did last month? All right, let's
Right.
adjust.
Right.
How do you measure your level of confidence? How do you measure your mindset? Right? Is it improving? Is it not improving? And for me, and this is one of the things that I teach is I call it the empowered woman's path. There are certain steps that we can take. There is a trajectory, there is a sequence to these things. And everything for me starts with that self-awareness, with noticing that there is a person there, like I was talking in the beginning, and paying close attention to that person. And so I encourage people to take the Enneagram test to understand their personality. Another thing that I have been using a lot is the love languages, but on yourself, because we tend to want to learn more about ourselves so that we can tell people, hey, this is how I am. So treat me nice because this is how I see the world. And we forget that we can't control how people treat us.
Right.
And if you could control, it really would start with how you treat yourself, back to what we were saying, because it does change people's reactions and people's attitudes when you shift internally, but still you can't control because they're their own person, right? So with the love languages, I encourage people to figure what their love language is and find ways to nurture themselves through that love language. So for me, my love language is words of affirmation, which I've been finding parallels with the Enneagram too. So for a type 3 that likes to accomplish so much and likes to be recognized and praised, it makes sense that words of affirmation is my love language. I love being praised and being recognized. But when you don't get that, you can fall apart. How about doing it yourself? Then you're never going to run empty because you're doing it. You're initiating it too. So I encourage people to do that. So the 5 steps that I have in my program starts with noticing yourself. So that's when we get into the personalities, strengths and weaknesses and all of that. The second step is listening to yourself. And I always like to use the analogy of a relationship with somebody else. When you're trying to work on a relationship, what's the first thing? Or even when you go to therapy, what's the first thing? Listen, stop talking and just listen. And that may seem weird because if you're the person, then you're going to have to talk. But just in the sense of paying closer attention to what you have been telling yourself, those stories, and really the type of self-talk that is going on, because oftentimes that self-talk is negative, is things that you would never tell a child. You would never tell your own kid the things that, you tell yourself. And when you reframe it that way, you're like, wow. And it goes back to there's room for improvement for my self-love, because I would not talk to even a friend or a client the way I talk to myself. We're so good at encouraging people and telling them, oh, you're doing a great job. It's okay that it didn't work out this time. Just keep going. And then when it comes to us, it's like, you didn't get it right. You should have gotten it right the first time. You can't be a beginner. You have to just rock it the first time. And then with others, we're just so understanding and so loving. The third step is forgiving yourself. I do a lot of work with forgiveness. And again, showing grace to your mistakes, understanding that just like we were saying, no skill is wasted. No experience is a waste either, because you can take lessons even from the most traumatic experiences. If you choose to look for gratitude, you will find positive things. So forgiveness is a huge step in that. And it really allows you to forgive people in your life as well. Because oftentimes what holds us back from reaching that next level is that resentment for what people did. And once you start understanding, hey, I couldn't have controlled what they did to me, but I can control my reaction now, especially after the fact, you start seeing things differently. You just get this brighter outlook in life. And then the fourth and the fifth step is empowering yourself, which I use the brag book a lot. So reminding yourself of your greatness and making that a practice. And finally, transform yourself, which most of us want to skip steps and get to the transformation right away. But you can't really change and transform into a better version of who you are if you don't know who that is. So it has to start with understanding yourself and then really seeing that the transformation is not that you're becoming a different person. One, because that's impossible. And two, it's really just operating out of a healthier space of who you already are. So like I mentioned before, working with yourself instead of against yourself. That's the transformation, and from a place of self-love. I usually like to use a phrase that I borrowed from the fitness space. They say you can't hate yourself skinny. I say you can't hate yourself happy. and you can't hate yourself successful. It has to come from a place of love and acceptance.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So let's talk through a typical, I mean, I realize every situation is individual, and I know you just talked about the 5 steps. Thank you. Let's just say someone comes to you, and I know you talked about self-awareness being that first step. Do you take them through these 5 different steps, and then do you continue working with them after, or do they graduate after they work through the 5 steps? Can you just give me a little bit of an idea for the framework when you work with your clients?
Yes. So I do have a short mini course where I outline these steps and I guide people through these exercises. And then the next step really is ongoing support and accountability. I do work one-on-one with clients too. But for the regular person just dipping their toes and wanting to understand this process, it really starts with getting that foundation of understanding those 5 steps, because really it never ends. It's actually a cycle, right? It's not that you graduate and then it's over, because with personal development, you just have to keep going back to, okay, let me notice myself. And sometimes maybe you're going through the 5 steps in one day. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm awful. And then you forgive yourself, and then you empower yourself. And then you go through all of this. And I have a membership called the Empowered Women School, where we handle each of the steps. Once a month, we move to the second step, to the next step. So we're focusing on that first one, which means even if you've already gone through all of them, we take the time to focus on each of them. So we go back and talk about the Enneagram again, and we meet weekly on Zoom, and I have guest experts join us. So it's just, and the fact that I called it school, it really brought me back to my teaching days. And I loved landing on the membership model, because for a long time I was focusing on one-on-one group coaching. And then I realized I don't want people to finish a course and think that that's it. I want them to know that this is an ongoing journey, and I want to be there for them and also learn from them, because I'm constantly learning with my clients. When you have someone share their story and their breakthroughs and realizations, you grow too. And then you feel proud because you were the facilitator for that process. It's just an amazing thing. But yeah, that's usually what happens is you go through this core content just to familiarize yourself with it, which this core content is inside the membership as well. But for those that don't want to make the monthly commitment right away, getting their toes wet in that sense is easier and better for them to take better advantage of the ongoing support, because they already have that foundation.
So this world of growth and transformation, I mean, it's amazing. It's fascinating. It's exhilarating. But from my journey, I mean, I can definitely say without a doubt, it's not all butterflies and rainbows.
No.
Right? I mean, there's heavy lifting, there's hard work involved, and there's no going back, right? Once you embark on this, I always say, once you get on the boat, it never goes back to the dock. So I know for myself, there were some fears early on. So first of all, did you experience some fears when you were, embarking on your journey? And then also, to follow that up, what fears do you see in your clients? I know they're all different. And how do you coax them? I mean, when they're standing there on the edge of the diving board going, I really want to dive in the water, but, I'm not sure. I have these fears. How do you help them overcome those fears?
Yeah. So I think fear is always going to be there. It's really an indication that you care and that you are stretching yourself. And going back to my somewhat career change, I really think that it is because I have this desire to challenge myself. And I think that comes with when you're really hooked on personal growth, it really becomes fun to see that ugly, right? To do the heavy lifting. It's really like a fun challenge. It's not that much of a chore. I want to see what's on the other side. Kind of like, what happens if I don't give up? Where am I going to get, So it becomes kind of fun. And for me, the languages, it's just so easy now. I literally just show up and use my brain. As long as I have my brain, I'm good. And with personal development and guiding people through these processes, it's really a challenge. It's a stretch for me, which is what helps you grow when you do something out of your comfort zone, right? And so I think for me, my initial fear and a lot of the things that I see with my clients is just the fear of, I'm never going to get there. How long is this going to take? And what does there look like? And a lot of what I have learned is there really is no there. And it's just really embracing the destination and the lessons that you're learning along the way. And it goes back to gratitude. The more you see the value and the lessons in the things that you're experiencing right now and really embrace those challenges as your friends because they're teaching you so much, the better the journey is going to be. And the destination is really just going to be an excuse for you to keep moving forward. So I think that's the biggest fear, is not knowing when things are going to happen, or am I really going to learn to believe in myself? And that's why I have loved the idea of having these steps, because it kind of helps you with this nebulous journey of where am I right now, and being able to identify, am I in the forgiving stage right now? Am I in this empowerment stage right now? I really understand my strengths and weaknesses. I understand I'm imperfect, but I can still celebrate myself, you know? And like I said, depending on what you're going through, you may kind of revert back. And that doesn't mean you're taking steps back. It's just that low that you're experiencing, which is actually the highlight of our paths are our lows, because if you learn to react to them by working with yourself, they're soon going to be your highs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, even those lows are gifts, right? Those challenging moments,
Yeah.
we can learn from them and grow from them. And I love how you said, the joy is, the essence of what you said is the joy is in the journey, right? It's embracing the present, embracing where we are. So many times in life we have this um, we have this idea that happiness is going to be when we get there. The, bigger house or the corner office or the status or the title or whatever it is. But then we're disappointed, right? We're let down when we're there and
Yep.
we still don't feel like we thought we would feel. And that's really, I think the key is just anchoring on how you feel, enjoy the journey, just soak it all up, because that's where the joy is, right? It's just, right here, right now in front of us.
Yeah, that's all we have.
Exactly. So before we wrap up, are there any additional words of wisdom or guidance you would like to share with our viewers and listeners?
Yes, I would just like to share a quote that I love that really put me on this journey. It's a quote that I found on Pinterest by accident, although I don't really believe in accidents. I was looking for specific colors and like mood boards for my brand, which I use a lot of pink. And I landed on this board of ideas for little girls' decor rooms. And there was a quote on a beautiful framed picture that said, "To my daughter, I will say, see your beauty without a compliment and without a mirror." And I got emotional when I saw that, for one, because I don't want my daughter to ever feel like she's not beautiful. And I know by experience that that time will come. I can't control that. I can't control what people will tell her or how she will feel. But going back to everything that I said, I can instill this love for herself by showing and modeling this. And to all the grown women that are listening to us, and men, take that into account for yourself too. Don't depend on that compliment. Don't depend on even a mirror or any other external factor to remind yourself that you are beautiful and that you are valuable. Start with yourself.
Amen to that. That is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing your story and all of your wisdom with us on this podcast. If our viewers and listeners would like to get a hold of you directly, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, you can find me on social media, just Marta Spirk, or tune into my podcast, the Empowered Woman Podcast. And my website is martaspirk.com. And I actually have a little guide that outlines all of these steps that I mentioned of the Empowered Woman's Path. And you can find that on my website too. It's called 5 Self-Love Hacks.
Great. And thank you for being here today. I so appreciate it. It's been wonderful chatting with you.
Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. And to all of our viewers and listeners, thank you to you as well. I believe that time is a choice, and I'm so grateful that you've carved time out of your day to be here with me and Marta and listen to all of her wonderful wisdom that she's had to share. Again, I would love to have you join our Facebook group. We are at liveauthentically.today/FB, and also check out a copy of my book, Soar, on Amazon. Thanks again, and have a great day, everyone.